guys, welcome back to Oopsie Daisy. This is our first entry into double-digit episodes, which is really exciting because if you know me, I don't follow through with much into double digits, except maybe like birthdays and handfuls of peanut M&Ms. Those will come in double digits. Don't tell anybody. But in honor of our first double-digit episode today, I figured you'd get a double-digit podcast host moment. It's not double digits, is it? There's only two of us.
Right.
Okay. Well, we have a special guest in studio today. I would like to introduce you to my husband, Chris. Do you want to be the Oopsie Daisy boy?
I am going to be the Oopsie Daisy boy. I think that's fair.
Is it emasculating? Do you want to be like the Oopsie Daisy man?
When people think of me, do they look at me as very masculine?
Yeah.
I can't use a hammer.
Yes, you can.
I have to ask people like how to build things.
See, that's just resourceful though.
No, I'm more of a like I'd rather clean up and vacuum.
So you're the Oopsie Daisy maid?
I'm the Oopsie Daisy boy. I like the Oopsie Daisy boy.
Okay, you can be. I thought maybe you would want to be like Mr. Oopsie Daisy. That's it. See, that's option two.
I kind of like that.
Right?
Mr. Oopsie Daisy. But doesn't that mean that I have...
Oh, Mrs.? That's me!
Yeah, right, that's
Mr.
true.
and Mrs. Oopsie Daisy.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so first time ever in studio, we have Mr. Oopsie Daisy, Chris Hirdler. Here's the best part. You approached me to be on this podcast. I didn't even have to chase you down. And you said to me, I think you have one more solo episode in you, and then I'm supposed to come on your podcast.
Yeah, it felt like the right thing to do. I mean, you and I have had some conversations, about the importance of supporting, and I was kind of overlooking the real true value of this was to sit down and listen to you and support you, and I think God put it on my heart a few weeks back just to offer it up and say, hey, I'd be willing to not only just support you, by listening to you and supporting your podcast, but also beyond there to, let people know that Mr. Oopsie Daisy Boy is
just
also willing to spend some time with you and support you, and then also let your listeners know a little bit about who we are and what we do.
Yeah, because it's not even like me sharing just my story and you supporting me. You just have your whole own journey that you could have your own podcast, you could have your own movie. I mean, your whole life is just one gigantic story. So do you want to tell any of that?
Sure.
Okay, do you want to start from your first words, McDonald's French fries? Did you ever think that you would come from your first words being McDonald's French fries to being on a podcast?
No. Isn't that pretty cool, though? McDonald's French fry to here I am on a podcast with a woman that knows like a million words.
It's just because I read a lot.
Well, and I don't.
It's
so
fine.
I think that's kind of funny how we go back and forth and some of these things work out.
Yeah, I suppose. It is unexpected that we would end up on a podcast together. Okay, so where do you want to start?
Boy, you are right. It's kind of been a journey. I don't want to bore people with all the nitty gritty stuff of being a kid, but some of it plays a part in who I am today. I was born to a 16-year-old mom and I think a 21 or 22-year-old dad, which is different. Probably frowned upon back in the 1980s.
Probably.
Growing up in a pretty strict Catholic community, when they found out that my mom was pregnant, we moved to Iowa. And so I didn't really grow up with a lot of church. We kind of grew up not a lot of money, grew up in a trailer, the trailer park hood, if you will.
Mm. You were the definition of trailer park boys.
Pretty much. From what I remember, it's what you know, and it was not bad. We had a lot of fun. It was interesting. You don't know what you don't have when you grow up that way. And I was always blessed to have loving parents who would do everything that we needed. But my dad had his issues, and I think my mom had her issues. But I just didn't grow up in a church family. I didn't really know what God was.
Was that related to the Catholic community pushing your mom out when she was pregnant, do you think?
I think some of that may have played a part into it. And I also know my mom, I think you get pushed. Certain people like to push views on people, and religion is one of those. Can be a pretty big topic. that people don't like to talk about, and I don't think my mom really enjoyed that or liked that. And again, at 15 or 16, that can be a difficult decision to have to make. But I do know when we moved back to New Prague when I was like 12 or 13, I tried to go to confirmation, and my mom pulled me from that.
Why?
I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I know that there was her own views on the church, and I don't think they aligned with how she was feeling, and didn't feel like that was something that she needed to push on me. I didn't go to church, was not raised in church. I think the only times we went to church was for a funeral.
So was that talked about to you when you were younger? Like, did your mom express her opinions about religion and church people to you? Or was it just something that was so not a priority that it wasn't even on your radar?
Yeah, I don't remember my mom saying anything bad, like, to me. Mm-hmm. She was never like, don't go to church, or people that go to church are bad. Whether that's right or wrong, I didn't know the difference. I just kind of lived my life. Mm-hmm. My mom and dad were always kind of working and doing their thing. And, when I got to be around 13, I had brothers that were 8 and 10 years younger than me. So I kind of became the fill-in parent, if you will. And so we just didn't go to church. And that's the interesting thing. You and I can sit here and talk, and there will be a lot of times, even at 42 years old, I'll ask you questions when we're at church or in the Bible or when we're at church and I'm reading something, because I just don't know anything about it. Mm. And so I've always struggled with the thought that I was dumb or insecure about church.
Or just the knowledge of what's in the Bible.
Right. Still do. I still struggle with that at times.
It's like you just didn't have like that Bible teaching base.
No.
And that made you feel super insecure.
Yeah, and I would seek it out. I went to a youth group, to a couple of the church youth groups in town when I was 14 or 15 or 16, just because I wanted community and connection.
It wasn't the girls that were there?
No.
Really?
Not that I remember.
So how did you get hooked up with that? If you weren't involved in church as a family, like, was it friends inviting you, or what was that?
Yeah, it was friends, but also at that time, I was hanging around the wrong group of friends. A couple of them some of them were going to church, some of them were not. They were, every Sunday church, and others were just the traditional holiday, Easter, funeral, whatever. Mm-hmm. Kind of like our kids do. If there's a youth group thing, hey, bring a friend. And so someone invited me to it, and I enjoyed it. I didn't really have any idea what any of that was or what we were doing. But I did know, and I think where my mom really kind of supported it was because it was something better than, running around and doing something that could get you in trouble.
Well, because you did a lot of that too.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the worst thing you did as a kid? Because the statute of limitations on anything illegal is over. I'm scared to ask like your deepest confession from your childhood rascal days.
Well, I stole a lot of money.
You did?
Yeah.
What did you steal from?
Anywhere and everywhere.
Like stores?
Well, I would steal from stores, sure.
Like, I knew you were like Sticky Fingers McHirdler, but I didn't...
Yeah, I stole basketball cards. I loved... I was just a 12 or 13-year-old that... I remember my parents being with me at Shopco in Mankato, and I stole a basketball card, and then we're walking out the door, and the police officer's like, what's in your pocket? And I'm like, oh, they got me.
Oh my gosh. Did you get in trouble?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a...
Like legal trouble?
I think so. This is, again, 1990... something.
All I can picture right now is like side of the road picking up trash with like a neon vest.
I know I had to sit down. This is so long ago, but I know I had to sit down with somebody and kind of go over some stuff. And, I remember getting into some other trouble, breaking into a garage, and I was with a friend who broke a TV, and we had to pay restitution. We also dressed up as like Girl Scout.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, we dressed up as like people that would go door to door and try to sell stuff.
No.
And I think we got to the third house and someone called the cops because we didn't plan that very well.
Did anybody give you money?
I think the first one did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it was, there was stupid ideas that we did that we thought were going to be brilliant ideas that we would make money really fast.
Yeah. So it was all in a spirit of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's put a positive spin on like a negative childhood experience.
Yeah. My parents were working, and so I it's not that I craved attention, but I got involved with people that were doing fun things that looked fun. I mean, I had a paper out when I was 9 years old, and I started working at our family's restaurant when I was like 14. And I think that those are ways for my mom to potentially try to keep me out of trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, did it work? Not all the time. I mean, there are things my mom probably still doesn't know about to this day at 42.
Well, she's about to know on this podcast.
She doesn't need to know.
Yeah.
Because my parents did the best they could.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know they're proud of me today, but that doesn't mean we don't all have flaws or things that we carry into our adulthood from our childhood that potentially leave us, with some wounds that we have to bring into relationships and things that we work through.
Okay, so youth group kind of got involved, but never really dug in, right?
No. The fascinating thing with me was I always wanted to have a relationship with God because I would see other people, and I whether it was them holding their hands up, because I went to a Billy Graham Promise Keeper thing at the Metrodome with the same friend that brought me to the youth group, and I was just like, wow, like this is amazing. There's 60 to 70,000 people here worshiping, and I did the Sunshine thing where we went and saw like DC Talk and Skillet when they were younger, and Michael W. Smith, like some amazing things, and I remember like I really like this, but I don't think I had anybody leading me there, if you know what I mean. Like I didn't have that youth pastor, that mentor, that friend that was really like, hey Chris, you should really try this. I was just kind of tagging along, looking for something or someone to do. And to your point, I mean, there were always girls there, which, I mean, that's always an added bonus, but I don't recall ever thinking that was why I would go, because I think maybe if that was maybe my bigger mindset, I may have stayed. But I've always just had that very unique lack of a relationship with God. Yeah. And really didn't know if I wanted to pursue it, nor did I think it was something that God would want to have a relationship with me, because, when I was thinking of all the things I had done wrong, I'm like, there's no way God is going to want to have a relationship with me because of all the things that I've done. And I didn't back then realize that, when you accept God into your heart and say that prayer that he forgives you for all your sins, I was just like, no, there's no way in heck that all the things that I've done. Now, again, mind you, at 42, I realize that there's a lot of things that people do that were worse than what I would have done at 15, 16, or 17 that I just didn't. I don't think I had the guidance on to understand if someone would have sat you down and said, hey, Chris, if you give yourself to the Lord and that he would forgive you and you'd be okay. I didn't do that.
Do you think that if somebody would have sat down next to you and said that to you, I know this is like a total hypothetical question, but if somebody would have sat down next to you and said that to you, do you think you would have done it? Do you think you would have pursued it differently? Like if somebody said, here's how to do it, and kind of gave you this guidebook and like walked you through it?
Probably not. No, it's nice to think about.
I know. Yes.
30 years later or whatever, reflecting on it, all the things that you would say to your younger self. Would I have done it? Probably not. Do I think if the seed had been planted earlier, it wouldn't have taken as long? More than likely, yes. But that was not a relationship that was on the top of my to-do list. Yeah. Was to build a relationship with God. What I tell people now, if I think about 4 years ago, Amanda, like where I am with my relationship with God, you have to pinch me sometimes, because that doesn't seem like a place I wanted to be even 4 years ago.
Nutshell that a little bit. So 4 years ago. So you jumped from youth group in high school. College was, what's one word? Say one word. The college was blank. What was it?
Is train wreck one word?
We can hyphenate it if it's not. So train wreck college. Not pursuing God in college. Not at all.
Pursuing lots of other things.
in hot pursuit of other things. Yes. Okay, and here's a question though, because a lot of people look back at their college days where there are pursuing, it's alcohol, it's drugs, it's sex, it's like a lot of things where if you're not walking with the Lord, you tend to walk that way because everybody else in college is doing it.
It's a lot easier to fall into those vices. I will say that. Alcohol, drugs, sex. Yeah. All of those things were really easy to get involved in because they were fun. Okay,
so looking back, would you say that college was fun or like a good experience? Were you happy? Were you fulfilled?
No.
That's a weird question to ask like a 20-year-old.
Well, depending upon what's, on what bucket are you filling? Was I fulfilled in the nature of, going out and meeting new people and having a good time? Yes.
I bet that fulfilled like your extroverted nature.
Yes.
You've always been a community seeker.
Yes.
You love to be around people. You love to have a good time, and you love to laugh. So yeah, I'm sure there's a little part of your little college boy heart that loved it.
But behind all that was insecurity.
What do you mean?
I would smile and laugh, and I would want to be a part of something. But when you're insecure, you do a lot of fake things. You do a lot of things to make other people happy, so that you think then that they like you, or that you feel liked. But behind all of that, when the doors close and everybody leaves, you're still left with yourself, and there's this huge void, right? And you feel insecure, and there's this fear of being alone, and there's this fear of what if they find out who you really are, right? And that could be, back then, it was like, I don't know that I want them to find out who I really am.
Why?
Because to me, there's this, I can smile and laugh, and my family and everyone that knows me, I love to smile and joke and laugh, and I can be the life of a gathering. But even after that, there can be this huge void inside of me that's always worrying and wondering what everyone's thinking. And it can be pretty powerful. Yeah. Because, left to my own devices, my brain or my little gerbil in my head can run and tell me all the things that I didn't do. And I've learned over the years that I'll call it the devil, the committee. There's a lot of different words that you can use for it. But when that thing goes, and if you're feeding it, that fire will ignite.
So is it hard for you today at 40 plus years old? Am I allowed to say your real age on here? Yeah. At north of 40, does that still exist for you today?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's a battle. I can't sit and tell you on here, anybody that's listening, that I don't think anyone is free from that.
Oh, I agree with you.
Our minds and our thoughts can go so quickly to the left or the right. And in the blink of an eye, our lives can change, and so can our thoughts, and so can our feelings. And it's a matter of which one are you going to go with. I've shared many times, my job as an alcohol and drug counselor, and there can be days I can have a great group and I can think I'm good. And then there are days where I could have a great group and I can still get in my head and the devil or the committee on my shoulders going, man, you're bad. You're garbage. Do you see that they didn't get anything from that? And it's sometimes really hard not to take that personally. And I'll be the first to say, a lot of times God was the last person I would go to share any of that with, or even pray openly, because I was like, I'm self-reliant. I'm going to do this on my own.
Did you think it was your voice in your head only?
Yes.
And that's why you don't reach out?
Yes.
Because it's like, oh, these are just my thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, so what orients you now? Like, how do you recognize? Because we all get in that. Like, I have that in my head too, a ton, about so many different things. I think everybody has sort of an Achilles heel that, it's an area of like insecurity that the enemy just whispers at you and just attacks you and just pokes you at. But it's hard to like orient yourself correctly and have a fresh, new, healthy perspective on it and just like choose to receive that thought or choose to push it away. So what do you do now? How do you recognize it now? Is it practice? Is it like an active thing?
Well, it's certainly practice. I think the first thing that most of us have to do is acknowledge it, right? Like my perception is not always reality, but my perception could be that, I'm this, I'm that, and everyone's rejecting me, and nobody's going to do this, and nobody's going to do that. But when I'm able to ground myself in reality is a lot of what I'm battling is just things that are personal, or that I'm dealing with personally. Mm-hmm. And it could be stress from work. It could be that, things that you and I have talked about that are hard, that the kids aren't doing this. And, the reality is it's not nearly as bad as I make it out to be. And because I can make it bad. I can justify and rationalize things, and I can awfulize things to make it seem like it's the worst thing in the world, right? A check engine light in my car goes on, and boy, you've seen it, where I'm like, we're gonna have to spend $50,000 on a new car. That's it. It's gonna explode. Yeah, and it's so easy for me to go there, and I would like to say I know I have the skill how to do it and deal with it, but I also have to in the moment realize that I'm having this feeling. What am I going to do with it? What's the situation? And a lot of times it's truly just me acknowledging it and knowing in the moment that this is an irrational thought. And that's not how it's really going to be.
What I think is so interesting, I don't know if I told you this yet, but I read an article, actually several, fell down like a deep psychological, mental, like brain rabbit hole early in 2024 where I was learning about neuroplasticity of the brain and how your brain learns and experiences things. And this article showed that our brains can't tell the difference between a thought or a feeling we're having and actual reality. And so I think that's where it gets so hard, is because when your brain has a thought like that and you have like a strong emotion that goes with it, you experience it like it is reality. So there has to be some moment of, like you said, choice, choosing to acknowledge it, choosing to identify it, choosing to kind of call it out and say, is this actually true? Is this actually happening? Or is this just in my head? But it's hard to slow your roll and do that.
Absolutely. I'd like to say I'm very patient. I have a lot of pride that I'm patient, but I think I can be patient on the outside, but my insides are on fire.
Oh, I didn't know that. This is good. This is insider information.
Well, I think it's to each of us. It's kind of understanding and knowing. But regardless if it comes out in the podcast or it's something that you and I deal with on a day-to-day basis, I think the biggest piece for you and I, and for a lot of people, is just having that open communication. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we can have open communication with other people if we're not open and honest with ourselves first. Right?
We should just stop right here and end the whole thing. I'll take that and just put it on my bathroom mirror. Well,
it's such an important piece, right? Like, one of the things that I was sharing is, for the longest time, I did not love myself. One of the things I shared with the kids a while back at youth group was, I can't tell you how many years I would brush my teeth, if I brushed my teeth.
We're just getting true confessions here.
If I brushed my teeth, but I would never brush my teeth or want to look at myself in the mirror because I hated who I was.
You just looked down into the swirling water with your toothbrush?
I don't even know if I looked. I mean, the lights are off. I just didn't like who I was. I didn't like who I was. I didn't love who I was, because that was always a battle for me. I knew on one hand I could make everybody happy and do all these things, and I felt like I had all these friends, but I never really had true friendship. I had a couple guys that I know that would do whatever for me, but I didn't feel like I had a true relationship with a lot of people. And so
that surprises me, because knowing you now, you are one of the most like honest and vulnerable and open people that I've ever met. So were you not that way? Like, were you masking, or was it like just being who other people who you thought they wanted you to be? What was that?
I think those are both right. I would mask, but I also would kind of chameleon myself to fit whatever or whoever I was with at the time.
A love relationship or
No,
friends?
Friends. But if I was with a group of girls, I would kind of change the way I acted, and I wouldn't be this like macho, weird talking guy that's trying to, talk about things guys talk about. I would kind of chameleon or change into over here where I could be very sensitive and talk and listen, and then over here, if the guys were talking about this, that, and the other thing, I could do all that. But then I think what that does is it gives you this true lack of an identity in who you really are. When you think about us being adolescents, you're trying to grow up and figure out who you are. But then when all that happens, and then you grow up and you graduate school, and then you start dating, and you're like, who am I? Like, what the heck am I? And you are trying to juggle all these different personalities. And that's not to say I had multiple personality, but when you're trying to juggle them all, you don't really know which one fits you.
Well, and that's hard too, because you're orienting your whole identity around other people, like the feedback that other people are giving you. So when people are not around you and you're just sitting with yourself, it's a very lost and confused feeling to not know who your real self is, what you stand for, what you believe, even what you like down to your hobbies. I used to do that. Mine was more, I would say, in like romantic relationships. Somebody once told me, this is going to sound really conceited, and it's not. And I feel weird saying this to you, but it was very easy for guys to fall in love with me and to be like that one that they were searching for a long time, because I was able to pick up on what they wanted, what they needed in their life, what they liked, and just like mold myself into that. But it's so scary and it's so dangerous, because then you don't really know even like what you enjoy doing. And I think I even did it too at the beginning of our relationship too, where I was just very like, yeah, whatever you want. And I just became that person. but you lose yourself. You lose, I think, who God really made you to be. And is that hard to hear?
No, I was just
You looked a little emotional for a second.
No, I was just thinking a part of my identity with relationships like you're talking about is that I would always pick the woman that needed help because it was just easier. Because then again, what it would do is I would help them and I could be, their hero or their knight in shining armor, but then I would never have to deal with or look at any of me, like the things that I had to work on.
Yeah.
And so it was very easy for me just to kind of swoop in for I don't want to say the wounded girl.
It's a right word though.
But, to the one that seemed like they were wounded or that they needed somebody. And I was just like, okay. So it was pretty simple. It allowed me to kind of do what I liked to do, which would help and, buy gifts and be there and do all of those things. But it never really, I was never really pushed in any of my relationships to kind of figure out who I was and what was really going on with me. Because it was just easier for me. And I think most of the time I was dating younger women, a couple years or 2 years younger than me. And so that was just a little easier in those relationships. And I was really smiling and laughing because the first time that we met. So it just, yeah, the night we met was...
I was a wounded girl though. I was. And
Yeah.
what's funny is as you were describing it, I was like, I was totally wounded emotionally, like spiritually. I was younger than you. I had no identity. So you swooped and locked in on that.
Well, and little did you know at the time, I had gotten a DWI 3 months before, lost my job, didn't have a car or a license, and came swooping in. I'm like, I got a lot to offer this one.
You're like, here's my sword, here's my shield. I will help you, but I can't help myself.
Here's a puzzle. Let's see if we can put this together.
You truly did hit like a rock bottom moment. So what led to that moment where you found yourself with no job, a DWI, all of that stuff? Because you said college was a train wreck, then we got sidetracked. Now we're still in college because you're about 23?
This is actually working out pretty well. We do get sidetracked when we just talk, so it's going fine.
It's going right on schedule.
It's perfect. I went to Normandale out of high school, which was probably the first mistake. I was not ready for college. Were you about to say where the N stands for knowledge?
Yes.
Normandale.
I hope nobody from Normandale listens to it. It's fine. Go there. He just didn't go there for actual knowledge.
No.
That's all.
I went there for
Parties?
anything but
Didn't you
school.
take a bowling class?
Yeah, bowling, stress management, cooking, probably crocheting. I don't know. It was money well spent.
It was less about your choice of college and more about your personal choices in that college.
Yes. I just took it upon myself to, go out and party, and I had what I would consider friends, but we liked to have a good time, and so alcohol was a pretty consistent thing for us. A lot of times on the weekends, because I was working, when I dropped out of college, I had to work or make some money somehow. Alcohol was one of those things that was very easy when you reflect on what I said before, when you have a lot of fear of, rejection and fear of isolation, fear of being alone. Alcohol is like the perfect relationship. It goes hand in hand because, what it would do is it would allow me to be more free. I did not feel maybe a lot of the things that were in my head, a lot of the jargon and the misconceptions that would go in my head. I just didn't feel that at all. That's probably why they call it liquid courage, because I just didn't care. I used to play amateur baseball, so that day we found out I was switching teams, and then of course naturally went out and drank, got a DWI, blew a .22, which is extremely high blood alcohol level.
Also ironic because it was your baseball jersey number.
It is. Lost my dream job at General Mills watching cake go by overnight.
Okay, dream job was sarcastic, right?
Very sarcastic.
Okay, I just had to double check and make sure you weren't having life regrets.
I thought that was really solid money, and I was making good money, and I thought, man, this 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. watching cakes go by, this has got to be the life. No.
Okay, here's a serious question, mini sidetrack. Did you ever do like a little frosting swipe as the cake went by on the conveyor belt? Or just a little taste test as it went by?
Yeah, it was never frosting. It was the actual cake. So we would sometimes, General Mills, if they're listening.
Statute of limitations
we
is
would
over.
just take a cake off of the line and then just eat it.
So your thievery from childhood continued into baked goods.
What do they call that? Quality control?
Oh, you just QC the line a little
We wanted
bit.
to make sure that it was tasting.
So what'd you do? It's like hide in the bathroom and eat cake?
No.
Wow.
No.
All right, continue on. My apologies for the sidetrack question.
So I'd gotten that DWI. I was on probation, working. My friends were still going out to bars. That was still kind of their thing, and I didn't want to be left out. And so we went to the city club in New Prague, and then there you were, sitting at the table there. And
in my wounded glory.
And I approached her and asked if she wanted, if I could buy her a drink. And she said,
okay.
Do you want me to do it?
You say
she
the whole
says, thing. Do you even know who I am? And I'm like, yeah, you're Amanda. Okay. And then you're like, well, I used to be fat. And I was like, whoa, this is interesting. Like,
but to be fair, I still was really fluffy at the point that I told you that.
Yeah. Well, and of course, me and my glory, I was like, this is it. This must be the one, because I think normal people would have been like, train wreck, get out now. But I didn't. I stuck around, and I carried your 7-pound clogs around all night. And
those were my going out shoes. I had just turned 21. Those were like my killer bar shoes. Slay all day in wooden high-heeled clogs.
Yeah. I'm picturing the lady or the man in Frozen that's selling the Swedish meatballs, and you have like 7-inch wooden clogs. It was...
Do Swedish people wear clogs?
I don't know.
Those are like Dutch people.
Dutch?
I do have Dutch in my background, though, so it was only fitting I was wearing the shoes of my people.
It was just interesting. I did say if I got you home that night safely that you owed me a date. So it was kind of romantic.
That was... Yeah, you shot your shot, that's for sure.
So, yeah.
I didn't remember you shooting it, though.
No, you spoke Spanish the whole way home.
I was just showing you my skills.
I didn't know if this was going well or not.
So we meet. You fall madly in love with me. Quickly.
Standard.
It probably was.
Yeah.
I did. I probably molded myself into everything you ever wanted.
Yeah. So, yeah, we start dating. I think I went to court on like June 8th. For my DWI.
Which is the day I think you asked me to be your girlfriend.
Yep. Well, I called you after I left court.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, this guy is winning.
A free man. I'm a free man.
Basically got a slap on the wrist for my DWI. I'm like, well, I'm winning today. So I'm just going to ask to see if you'll be my girlfriend. And I called you and you were like, yes. I'm like, so today was a good day.
Yeah.
June 8th of 2005.
I didn't go to jail and I got a girlfriend.
Yeah. And this kind of brings me to June 11th of 2005. We had a baseball game that morning and went out to my parents' cabin. We had a party out there. We had gotten a 16-gallon keg. To my recollection, or what I've been told, we ran out of a 16-gallon keg and they went and got another one. And so there was just a lot of drinking going on and partying. And I don't remember most of the evening, but that night I end up running down my parents' yard, down the dock, and I dove headfirst into the water. I was 6'1", and I dove headfirst into 3 feet of water. Immediately shattered my C5 vertebrae in my neck. Apparently, I was just kind of bobbing in the water.
Yeah, I had followed you out to the end of the dock, and I saw you dive in. And I think it was vital that this happened at the very beginning of our relationship, like when you're super obsessed with somebody and you just can't even take your eyes off them. Because if this would have been today, I'd have been like, yep, go swimming, you're fine, I'll stay up at the house. But I went down on the dock with you and I saw you dive in and you never came back up. And I was like, what is going on? And then just in the dim light from the house up the yard, I just saw your back, like doing that classic dead man's float that kids do in the pool when they pretend they're dead and drowning. That's what I saw. So I jumped in.
Yep.
And I pulled you out and I started screaming for everybody because I couldn't get you up on the dock. You were too heavy. And so I was yelling for help and I just was like pulling this lifeless body out of the water. And some people came and helped you up onto the dock from the water. And it got weird from there. It got real weird because then everybody's like, don't touch him. And and ambulances came, and there was like rides into town, and you went to the hospital, and they helicoptered you to about an hour away to the cities because you had broken your neck.
I don't remember any of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. I know we've talked about this numerous times over almost 19 years, but it's still weird to think about how crazy that all of this stuff, to even reflect on it now. I mean, I'm sitting here talking to you, and this June it'll be 19 years. Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
To think about all of that stuff and how we can laugh about it, but also even like as we're both looking at each other right now, just kind of replaying some of that stuff and how lucky, maybe it wasn't luck, how blessed.
You know what I always say about luck?
It's not luck.
It's
God.
Yes.
Yeah, the next thing I remember is I woke up in one of those machines that was moving my body ever so slightly to the left or the right, just so my body would move and I wouldn't get bed sores. And I still don't really know to this day if that was a day later or 2 days later. It's all a blur.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew that something was wrong because I couldn't move certain parts of my body. My feet or my legs wouldn't move. That was something. You know, Amanda and I were like officially dating for 3 days, and so I just assumed, like any other person would in my situation, is that she's left and she was never coming back, because I didn't think that somebody who literally had known me for less than a month and then had been dating for 3 days was going to stick around. And so to my shock and surprise, when I remember seeing her in the hospital, I was kind of like, what are you doing here? Because they had kind of given me the prognosis that I was probably never going to walk or have kids again.
And what was your reaction to that?
To kill me. You know, at 23 years old, when they told me I wasn't going to walk or have kids, I just said, kill me or let me die. I think that's one of my biggest regrets in life, is I wish I wouldn't have said that, but I think anybody who heard me say it now realizes, 19 years later, that we're all glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
There's so many stories that you and I could probably do a whole nother episode podcast of just the Chris and Amanda hospital follies.
Maybe we'll do a series. We'll do a hospital series.
The things that you and I would laugh and cry about just trying to get me out of the hospital, or just the idiosyncrasies of trying to have somebody who's in a wheelchair.
Okay, y'all, we got to pause the conversation there for right now. But stay tuned for part 2. We're going to talk about marriage, my infidelity, how we ended up getting divorced, and we get to share about how God totally redeemed and restored our marriage and our entire family. Can't wait to tell you about it. See you next time. Bye.